All right, thank you. My name is John Campbell. I'm the founder of Smorgborg. We are a social network platform for clubs and organizations. And we've been in Vegas for about 2 years. 1 year in our current form, and then the prior year was more of a prototype form. And that's when we presented last time when we were just coming out of our prototype. So there's actually two problems that we're trying to solve. One of them, first off, our customers are organizations, more along the lines of clubs rather than corporations at this point. So I've actually tailored this a fair amount to StartUpNV. I don't know if that'll be good or bad, but that's the way we're going to go with it. So on the StartUpNV side, presumably the organization and many other organizations have issues with using a variety of tools to do memberships, events, donations, emails, communication, things like that. Virtually all the organizations we deal with have limited resources of time and staff, often technical skills, although that wouldn't be the case for StartUpNV. And then another one, which isn't really quite as obvious, is limited reach, although it seems obvious. One thing that they have to do, though, is they have to go through a lot of databases and logins. They're often importing and exporting things. I noticed with StartUpNV, some of the vendors that you use are MailChimp, TicketTailor, HubSpot, Meetup, Stripe, and I couldn't identify what you use for volunteers. Union. Union? Okay. I hadn't heard of that one. Yeah. So there's a slight lag time here. So this is kind of a visual representation of what happens. And oftentimes, the organization is faced with a few scenarios. One is that they have all these bits of data about the individuals in these separate platforms, and they remain there. So you have ticket purchasing info in one platform, email reading information, and entered information, and they're all in different platforms. So they can't communicate with each other. On the other hand, you might be importing and exporting a lot of Excel files, which is also tedious. Or you might have some above average technical skills and be using a lot of APIs and things like that. But that is relatively uncommon. So generally, they're trying to accomplish a lot of things, use a lot of tools with limited times and skills. So the other, and just a point on that I'll get to later, is there are competitors in that space doing that, but I'll address that in a minute. So the larger thing and less identified is actually issues for communities. So in this case, I would use the investment community in Nevada. Oftentimes, if not every time, there aren't community calendars, there aren't directories of all of the various entities. There's not ways for the Henderson Angels to easily communicate with the Reno Angels, things like that. There's not bits of information that will explain what's going on in the community, whether it's more of a personal touch or very professional, and unless you're in an industry that has journals or things like that. And then oftentimes there's not a perceived benefit of working together. And so a lot of times organizations work in a silo. But essentially there's probably a better word for it, but almost a community intranet and an ability to kind of come together for communities that want to come together. And another result of what happens is there's a huge duplication of effort. You'll have a lot of organizations trying to do the same thing that a quote competitor is doing when they should really be supporting the competitor and focus on their core things. Ultimately, a lot of it is about building critical mass. A lot of times, an individual organization might have trouble building individual or critical mass, but if you group together. The analogy that I kind of want to get in your heads is, say there's StartUpNV, but say there's also Startup AZ and Startup UT. And maybe those 3 or 5 or however get together and they accomplish things that StartUpNV couldn't accomplish by their own. Conversely, if you go down the chain, if it's just on a Vegas or a Reno scale, you might have scenarios where the Vegas community needs to get together and do things that they can't do as a solo organization. So as far as the scope goes, It's practically limitless as far as organizations. In fact, with I think it was Jim and Chase's example, you could probably build a business just on police officer organizations, or on pilot organizations. Might be a smaller market, but there's an average of 1 membership per person, so that comes out to 3 million memberships in the US. We definitely intend to go global at some point, although obviously baby steps. And basically there's a lot of time spent by people in organizations on a wide variety of types of organizations. As far as competitors go, so in some of the verticals, there are some big competitors like Eventbrite and MailChimp, although, I actually expected Constant Contact to have a higher market penetration. But what's ultimately come down to is Eventbrite and MailChimp, they kind of become commoditized. And I would be curious in the discussion part, why StartUpNV chose TicketTailer, because there are dozens, if not hundreds of ticketing agents. On some of the other areas, there are smaller and more fragmented market competitors, but most of the time they're specializing. There are a couple like Wild Apricot and Nation Builder that are trying to take a broader view of things, and I'll get to that in a minute. One thing I wanted to just show real quick, a lot of these were built 10 or 15 years ago, and they're still on kind of an old term technology. So you guys can look through your old emails and you'll be able to see there's a significant portion of emails that you receive that are difficult to read on the phone. Now this is blown up, so it's a little bit easier to read, but if you're sending an email that is difficult to read on the phone, your audience is very unlikely to read it, and that you just cut down half of your chance of actually getting your message out. So let's see here. As far as the solution goes, it's really 2 solutions. One of them is distilling down all of the needs, all of the core needs. So we're not trying to be SurveyMonkey, we're not trying to be Eventbrite. We're taking the core basic needs of what an organization needs and putting it into a platform that's easy to use, that you can use from your phone. You can take advantage of that 10-minute break, and you can send out your email from your phone, which is in some cases difficult to do from some of the older technologies. And then on the community side, we actually allow organizations to friend each other. So using that example of StartUpNV, they'd be able to friend Startup UT, Startup AZ, also go down the chain, and I know some of these may not exist, but down the chain, Startup Las Vegas, and then even up the chain, Startup Western Angel Investors, Startup United States. So there's a lot of relationships that actually already exist, and we're just trying to help essentially digitize them. The result of it is a lot of things like community calendars, messaging amongst leaders, reporting, things like that, which we can go into more detail. So as far as the revenue goes, it's basically what they're used to paying already. It's the MailChimp model where they're paying, it's slightly different, but they're paying a penny per contact per month. On the revenue side, we're essentially making $1 per transaction on a ticket. On the storage side, we're basically charging for Dropbox type of prices. There's something that's a lot more detailed that we're probably going into discussion, but this is actually a good business model right here. But there's probably a revenue stream that's double this that I'll have to address in discussion probably. There is a freemium model, so you can hop on and check it out without having to invest money. And that's the little asterisk at the bottom, that there's potentially different revenue caps on other products that we have. This one will definitely be required on the discussion phase, but this is actual scenarios of customer acquisition based on a variety of communities. They definitely have different characteristics, but there are some things that remain pretty consistent. This is our team. We are a small team. It's mostly software development. The very short reason I got into this was I ran something called Campbell Networks many years ago that tried to do this without any technology. I definitely had my 10,000 hours of experience in that, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. And then the ask is actually to see if you guys will have a discussion about becoming a customer. And the main reason of that is that you guys aren't the best case for a customer, but if you get it, just even the story, then it's going to be a really easy decision as far as investment goes. So, I mean, I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but not really. And then the actual financial ask is we're looking for 80,000 of angel capital this quarter. Long story short is we're looking to get more money at the end of this year, early next year, but there's still things that we want to build out in the short term. So I will stop there because I'm a little over 10 minutes.
You